All right, good day and welcome to Predators Proclivity, where we look at data for the season for the NHL Nashville Predators and make comments on it. I'm your host, Preston Proctor. So the Preds played over the weekend. They played Saturday and Sunday. They play tomorrow night, this being Tuesday, the 12th. And since we had a couple days between games, I thought I would go back and kind of explain why I'm doing this podcast, who I am, what the podcast is all about, and just add a little bit of detail because I've got nothing else to do today. But anyway, so I'm going to explain the genesis and background of the show. I'm still feeling my way around the podcast, and the more things that I do, the more data I'm trying to collect and make some sense out of. So I'll give you an idea of what it is that I'm doing currently, where I'm looking, and we'll go from there. And so, we'll go in that direction today. So as far as the podcast goes, if you've been listening, I'm going to stick with the two segments that I have, game summary and Pred stats, home and away. So far, that feels like the right detail to me. If I get some feedback that could add some things, we'll take a look. But I think just kind of going over the stats of where the teams are, independently, and then how they look together, and then what the Preds look like in the type of situation that they're in, which right now home and away. So I think that works out pretty well. Okay, so up front, first thing, my name is not Preston Proctor. It's a pseudonym that I think goes well with Predators Proclivity. Predators Proclivity, Preston Proctor. I picked the name Predators Proclivity as I wanted something that used alliteration, and both of those start with PR. I think it just kind of rolls off the tongue. Proclivity is another word for tendencies, which is mainly what I discuss on the show anyway. So it kind of works. And, of course, I'm talking about the NHL Predators, Nashville Predators, so Predators is in the name. Preston Proctor is a name that just happens to start with the same three letters as the name of the show. So Preston, P-R-E, Predators, P-R-E, Proctor, P-R-O, Proclivity, P-R-O. So there you go. That's how I came up with the name, and my name, the host name, or whoever's talking here, and being upfront, completely upfront about the name. My wife hates it, so I did it anyway. I wanted to go ahead and start the podcast, and I didn't want to be sitting around thinking, "Gosh, what am I going to call myself?" It could go by my name. I'll probably change in the future. It just seemed like it'd just be a little bit more fun to be a little bit more anonymous. Not that it matters. Not that I'm walking down the street and people are like, "Hey, aren't you the guy that does that Predators podcast?" It's not at that level yet. Maybe one day. Anyway, moving on from the name. So we have been Preds ticket holders since the 2020 season. That season was the COVID season, and so having the tickets didn't really matter because we didn't get to go to so many games. But that is where we started going, which coincides, oddly enough, with when we moved here. So the entire time we've been living here in Nashville, we have been Preds ticket holders. I've always liked the Preds. You can't not like Rene. I mean, what an amazing goaltender. And just the idea of having the hockey team in Nashville just seemed so cool. And I love the colors, and I prefer the old colors, more of the blue. And I've got one of the older jerseys, and I think that looks nice. I realize you got to change things up. At least they've got some nice colors in it. So that works out well. But we moved here with the intention of being hockey fans. And we moved here from Seattle right before Seattle got their team. I was thinking about being a Seattle ticket holder, and I just couldn't pull the trigger on going downtown to that stadium, that many times ever, fighting traffic and whatnot. It's in such a horrible location, and intentionally, but I understand it's a beautiful stadium, and we'd love to go sometime. Haven't. But anyway, so 2020, knowing we were going to move here, I had bought the tickets before we even moved here. So we were definitely looking forward to going to the Preds games and being Preds fans. I guess a side note on being Preds fans, when you become a ticket holder, they should give you a list of all the cheers that they use in the stadium. I think I'm starting to understand most of them. I think every now and then I still hear one and I'm like, oh, what was that? When do they do that? So, but yeah, I think letting people know what the cheers are would be advantageous. I'm not a fan of negative cheering, so I don't really get into it. But the fans obviously do, and it's great to have so many people in the stadium cheering and all going together. So that part is really great. So, we enjoy going to the games. It's kind of fun being down on Broadway. I have a nephew who plays down on Broadway, and so, every now and then we're able to go down to Broadway and then swing over and catch one of his shows, which is fun. So, okay, now that's our Pred story and a little bit of the backstory on how we got here. But the honesty part, the real blunt honesty part, and you probably picked up on this if you've been listening, we are serious Los Angeles Kings fans. I used to live in L.A., lived in L.A. for about 5 years. 1999 to 2004. My wife moved to LA right out of college. She saw Gretzky at the Forum. And we were living in Seattle when the Kings went to the Stanley Cup Finals in 2012. And I remember we wound up. It's a kind of a funny story. It's like kind of a long story, but the Game 6, which is when they clinched it, and you never know when they're going to clinch it, right? So my wife and I are out on Sunday, and we're playing golf up in Seattle, and we're like, gosh, we want to go. It's they're going to be in L.A. It's Game 6. They could clinch it. If they do, and we're not there, we will regret it. We will just absolutely regret it. And I'm sure we would have. And so Sunday, I'm hitting a golf shot. I'm checking Ticketmaster. I'm checking StubHub. I've got the ticket prices up on my phone because I also don't want to fly to LA if I don't have the tickets, right? I don't want to fly in LA and down to LA and then stand outside of Staples Center at the time or, whatever, Crypto.com or whatever it's called now. And thinking, oh gosh, am I going to be able to get in? So like before I bought the airline tickets, I wanted to make sure that we had tickets. And so Sunday morning, they're like $700 a ticket. It's like, well, I want to go and everything, but there's a limit. There's a limit to how much I'm willing to spend. So by the time we got done with the round of golf and got home, the tickets were down to about $200, which is a little more reasonable. Now, when we were going into the stadium to see the game, there were people standing with us that had bought them that day and had bought them for $50. I don't know where they were sitting, but anyway, so we got the tickets. We were there. The Kings won handily. We were sitting a couple of rows in front of where the Kings announcers were, Jim and Bob, and just loved those guys. They were great. Listening to their broadcast of games, I always hated it when we went to the playoffs that the networks wouldn't carry them, but they were fantastic announcers. Clearly, Jim's retired. Bob's retired. Jim Fox is still one of the announcers, and Jim would explain the rules. If there was a penalty call, he would explain it. And I always loved that, no matter how long, the team, I think 50 years now, and the announcers are still trying to make sure people know what the game of hockey is. I would like a little bit more out of that, out of the Preds announcers. But I think they do an okay job. I'm getting more and more used to them. But Bob and Jim really set the mark so high. I think there are other announcers in the league that are pretty good. I think years ago I listened to a Dallas Stars broadcast and I liked them. My absolute hated announcers were the ones that do the Anaheim Ducks games. And I haven't watched one of the games. Maybe they're not doing it anymore. But the guy, I swear, never thought the Ducks ever committed a penalty. Never. Nothing they ever did should have warranted a penalty. The guy could take a stick, whack the guy upside the head, knock him down, push the goaltender aside, and throw the puck into the net, kicking it with his skate, and the guy would be like, well, that's a good goal. But anyway, so we were just a couple of rows down, so we could wave at them and yell and say hi, and then of course they're crying at the end, and the nice thing about that win was the Kings were so far ahead that you could really feel it beforehand, and my wife and I stayed in the stadium and we watched everything that went on in the ice, and Jonathan Quick skating around, and we just hung out there until there was nothing to do. So whatever happened outside the stadium, I think we missed it because by the time we got out of the stadium, it was kind of everything had really kind of died down, and so we saw Game 6, 2012. Kings won their first Stanley Cup. Amazing. So obviously, you probably hear how excited I am about all of that. That being the case, I think that being a Kings fan is going to wane over time. We moved here. We got Kraken gear. We've got our Kings stuff. Now we got Predator stuff, and trying to follow three teams throughout the season. Oh boy, that's just a little hard. A little time consuming, and and we to be honest, we hate Rob Blake and we think he's an idiot and think he's ruining the Kings. All that being said, I have an opinion, but as I think our cheering for the Kings, speaking of colors, I really hate the fact that all they do is wear black anymore. I mean, I love the purple, the gold, so, being a Predators fan and having, colors back in the uniform, I think that's just great. The whole black thing, I just don't care for. So, our cheering for the Kings, I think, will wane, as the players we're used to cheering for are either traded, like the indomitable Jonathan Quick. Go Quickie. Rangers are doing really well. We're kind of excited about Jonathan Quick maybe getting his name on the Stanley Cup for the fourth time. Thank you, Rob Blake, for trading him away and giving him the opportunity to be more successful than you ever could have imagined. Not bitter at all, but we just love watching Jonathan Quick play. Whenever he comes to town, we're hoping he's in goal. And so, those players will either be traded or they'll retire like Dustin Brown, the captain. I just think that it's going to be inevitable. We're here, we're trying to pull for the Preds, and our hearts will be Kings fans. So, but yeah, I think over time we'll be more Preds fans. Definitely now when the Kings come to town, we pull for the Kings. When Seattle comes to town, I'll get to that in a minute. But so we did move here from the Seattle area. So we do like to say that we're Kraken fans. But I'm not sure I could name anyone playing for them. Just sitting here thinking, I know there is a guy who's really good and he's very fast and he's got curly hair and he's number 13. That's as good as it gets. that's really about as good as it gets. I think a king got traded to the Kraken, so I might know something about that. Oh, speaking of kings, being traded, but not this guy wasn't traded. Jarrett Anderson Dolan, now with the Preds, got picked up on waivers the other day, last week. I missed that when I was doing all of my trade deadline stuff. Good player. Looking forward to see him in. Always liked seeing him play for the Kings. Number 28. I noticed in the he's got a jersey in the somehow there's a St. Patrick's Day jersey going on this week for the Preds and their Preds Foundation. But okay, so Anderson Dolan, number 28. Great to see him here. Who was that guy? Number 5. Another guy played for the Kings for just a couple of years, but he was here, defenseman. He was 55 for a couple of games, and then I think back to 5. But I think he's playing in the minor teams right now. But anyway, so the Kraken, don't think so that I could name anybody. They did a great job of naming the team, and the announcement video was super. And also, when they did that, when they got to do that draft where they draft players from other teams, that was so much fun because they brought the Supersonics players back, and Marshawn Lynch had to pronounce some guy's name that I tell you, most people, I don't even think a lot of hockey announcers could have gotten it right. But Marshawn Lynch was really funny with that, and the Seattle Storm players got to do stuff. So, it was great the way they managed all of that. I really have to give kudos to the Kraken management and ownership for how they did that, how they came up with the name of the team and the announcement video, because, having lived in the Seattle area for 16 years, I was sure it was going to be something stupid. Absolutely stupid. I was so pleased. Oh, anyway, so I could go on about the Kraken a little bit more, because having lived in the area and all the discussion about where the stadium was going to be and how come Key Arena's a roof suddenly became a landmark. But we don't need to go there today. When the Kraken come to town, maybe we can, go into that a little bit more. So, trying to pull for 3 teams, pretty rough, especially in 2000 when none of them made the playoffs. I mean, come on, we're pulling for 3 teams. One of them, half the league gets into the playoffs. Really? None of them. Okay. So anyway, the next year the Preds made the 21 playoffs, which was good. Seattle and the Kings both made it the next year. So, congratulations for Seattle for making it to the playoffs that quick. We were here. We did have tickets. We wore our Kraken gear when the Kraken, in their second game as an NHL franchise, won their first game. We were very excited, very happy to pull for the Kraken. And most people that sit around us recognize us for wearing the Kraken gear and kind of forget that we pull for the Preds. But anyway, it's fun. Definitely fun to see them win. We'd love to wear our Kraken gear because it is so fun. Last year, late in the year, the Kraken were here, and the Kraken looked pretty good for the Kraken in the playoffs, and the Preds obviously needed the win. So it was so weird. We were wearing our Kraken gear and pulling for the Preds, and that was just so confusing. It was just so confusing because, okay, if we're pulling for the Preds, why aren't we wearing Preds gear? Oh, but so weird. So I love the gear. We've got it. I don't know. I guess we'll see how that goes over time too. So there you go. That's the Kings, the Kraken, the Preds. How did I get involved in hockey? Is that I used to have a job where I traveled every week. I'd go fly out on Sunday, fly back home on Friday. One year I was only home 50 5-0 nights at my house, and that included weekends. I mean, that was just total. My brother was building a house, and I went up to help him a couple times, I think. And I had a cousin that got married, and I had to go overseas for the job. So I was traveling quite a bit, but I wasn't very home a lot. So when you're traveling that much, you try to find something to do, right? I mean, you work out, you go to restaurants, but after a while, traveling all the time, unless there's something very interesting about a town, you're trying to find something to do that's on a regular basis. So what I would do would go to sporting events. Well, why not? I was in Birmingham. I got to see Michael Jordan play for the Barons. And, so minor league games, I started going to minor league, major league hockey games too. And so I really, really started liking hockey about then. I had very little, growing up, had very little interaction or knowledge of hockey. I remember my mom bought me this big bag of gum with trading cards, football, baseball, and then hockey. And so I've got all these old hockey trading cards from the 70s, still have them. And, and I would get to sit them down, play with them like they were football players and, line them up. And because I had no idea about hockey. I had no clue, none. So anyway, I'm going around the major league, minor league games. And, I would always say, I'd just walk up there and give me your best seat on the end of an aisle. Yeah, I'm 6'2", like to have a little bit of leg room. A lot of stadiums aren't the best for leg room. So it's always nice to be on the aisle. So I usually have a pretty good seat. I remember I was in St. Louis this one time. Great game. One of my favorite games ever. I think St. Louis must have been playing Chicago. Huge rivalry. The fans were it was just a regular season game, and the stadium was packed, and the fans were so into it. It was so much fun. There was sitting next to a couple, and the lady had a set of binoculars, and like I said, I'm 14 rows off the ice in the corner. And she's sitting there holding the binoculars. But when they started fighting, man, she brought the binoculars up. I mean, the fight could have been right in front of us. She's bringing the binoculars up. She's watching the fight. She brought the binoculars just to watch the fights. Okay, hey, she's good for her. It was so anyway. So I'm watching all this, and I started getting more into hockey, and just the speed and the skill level is amazing. I think we were down in Arizona once and watching the Kings play, and they were doing the cycle, right? They get the puck into the opponent's zone, and they start skating around, passing the puck up between a couple of them to kind of try to lull the defense to sleep. And and we were glass level, and Andrzej Kopitar was skating around, and oh my gosh, he was so fast. It's really can't get the sense of how fast these guys are skating on the ice until you get down to like that level. Even if you go down to the minor league games, you can get a sense of it, because some of those minor league players are pretty fast too. And watch the puck. I mean, the puck, it's just not skating along. It's flopping around, and Andrzej Kopitar is skating around really fast. With kind of just with his puck on his stick, and just holy cow, it was just unbelievable. I can't do it. I can skate. I can skate in a straight line, but I can't stop or turn. So. When I used to live in L.A., I'd go rollerblading on the Strand, and if something came up, I just jump into the sand, because I know I can't stop or turn. So I lived in San Francisco for a couple of years before I moved to L.A. I went to the Shark Tank, saw a game, thought it was great. I absolutely, positively hate the Sharks now because they're big rivals of the Kings. And back a few years ago, one of the Shark players played the puck from the bench. It's going by the bench. It was a Couture played the puck from the bench, and nobody caught it. And David really? The refs didn't pay any attention? Nothing happened. I'm sorry, I've got a little bit of the sniffles today. I apologize for that. But going to San Jose, I lived north of San Francisco, so going to a game wasn't that convenient. But I thought the Shark Tank was a great place to go and watch a game. It's probably, I don't know if they've renovated it. This was a while back, so, like over 20 years ago. So it could be completely different now. I bought a turtleneck with a little shark icon on the shoulder or on the neck, and I loved it until I became a Kings fan, and then I'd look at it going, I can't wear that. I can't wear that. I finally had to give it away. I'm like, I just kept looking at it going, I'm not going to wear that. I'm not wearing that. Not even on a bet. So I finally gave it away. So, then again, after I lived in San Francisco for a couple of years, then I moved to L.A., started going to Kings games, and switched just from being an overall fan of hockey to a fan of the Kings. Because before that, I just loved watching hockey, and I liked watching good games. And I really, if I went to St. Louis, I'd pull the Blues. If I went to San Jose, I'd pull for the Sharks. If I went to some minor league team, I'd pull for the team that I was at the arena of. But when moved to L.A., started going to Kings games, and switched from being an overall fan to a fan of the Kings. So while I was in L.A., did a whole bunch of stuff. I generally worked for myself at that point, software consultant. I did some extra work. I was in a couple of movies, a couple of TV shows. Nothing serious, but I was in a movie with George Clooney. Although he doesn't remember, I'm sure. Anyway. So one of the other things I did is I worked as a scorekeeper at the LA Kings practice facility for amateur roller and ice hockey games, which was a lot of fun. Both men's and women's leagues, and they had elite leagues, and then they had intro level leagues. So you never knew. I mean, I guess being one of the newer scorekeepers, I didn't get to do elite games very often. I'd usually do, more of the mid-level men's leagues and stuff. And so that was fun. Get to watch hockey. And as a scorekeeper in the practice facility, you're it. You're not reffing the game. You got two refs out there, but you keep score. Had to count the number of shots on goal, make announcements, play music. Manage the in and out of the penalty box. The guys are always, opening up the door, and they're trying to get ready. And you keep that door closed, because it's dangerous to have open doors on the ice. And the teams would even do that too. If they had players coming on and off the ice, or they were going to have players coming on in and off the ice, and they'd have the door open, and I'd be like, hey, look, close that door, close the door. So it's kind of thing, and it was a lot of fun. And it was interesting because at this point, I still don't know a lot about hockey. And what I really don't know are the symbols for the different infractions. And so, the refs would skate over and be like, number 12, and then do the boarding symbol. And I'd be like, well, what was that? I have to get the refs to come back over and go, what was that? Boarding. Oh, okay. Boarding. Got it. I got it. Then I learned later what boarding was, but it's all a process, So anyway, during the summer, sometimes you'd see some of the pros, I think like Anson Carter, who I think did play for the Kings briefly, but most of his career was somewhere else. I think he would come out and he'd play sometimes in the elite leagues, and so it was so it was really kind of fun in the summer to see some of the pros skate. But in general, it was pretty nice. It was a nice little gig. Didn't pay a whole lot, but it was kind of fun. The Lakers also practice at that facility. But you could know when they were there, but they had their own entrance and everything. So And I don't have any idea where the Clippers practice. When I lived in LA, the Clippers weren't very good. So then not only did I not know, I did not care. Did notice, though, it was really kind of interesting. Those of you who have been to an NBA game and a hockey game, NBA fans are taller. They're much taller. Oh, my gosh. They're so much taller. We would go every now and then we'd get Lakers tickets or Clippers tickets, arena football tickets, whatever was going on at Staples Center. A lot of fun having a lot of different sports in your town. We go to Sounds games here. We haven't been to Titans games yet. Maybe we will with the new stadium. I think the old stadium, I don't know. Pull for the Titans. Just haven't been to a game yet. But anyway, yeah. So the Lakers. So when you go to the games, I just noticed that. Oh my gosh, when I go to hockey games, I feel tall, and then when I go to a basketball game, I'm like, holy crap, I can't even find myself. I'm so short with all these other people. So anyway, okay, that's me, and a lot of me talking maybe a little too much about hockey, but more talking too much about myself maybe. So anyway, okay, all of my backstory and things I've been through in my life is fine, but why am I doing this? What am I doing? I think maybe some time in the last half hour I forgot what I was doing, rambling on instead of talking about what I'm doing. But here we are. What am I doing? Okay. I mentioned a couple times on this podcast already that I heard the Preds announcer say that scoring the first goal was the most important thing. And every time I heard that, I thought, you have got to be kidding me. Now, I've never played hockey. As I said, I can skate. I just can't turn or stop. Good things there's the boards there. So the mentality of the players is a different thing than looking at data. So if it could be that psychologically, and I know, having listened to Jim Fox and that. The mindset of the teams change when they have a lead or if you're behind. So you start playing differently. So that's different than what I'm doing, which is just looking at the data. So if the psychology out there is one way and I'm saying it different, that's not my area of expertise, and actually data is not my area of expertise, but data is what I've got and that's what I'm working off of. So, but, like I said, having, heard them say it, I don't believe it, didn't believe it. I'm coming around a little bit. And then, we'd go into the games and, I got to thinking, gee, the Preds suck in the second period. They're just really, just have not suck, but it felt like, they play well in the first, they play well in the third, and then in the second period, it's like, what's wrong here? I mean, I understand, it's the long change, and you can get caught, especially if you're on the other side of the ice, in defense, that you can get caught and not be able to get off the ice. I get that. But every team has that, right? I mean, every team in the second period has that. Now, some teams actually do well in the second period, and I guess it's a whole different deal. But I think, and I think what I've seen by looking at the data is I didn't really get the sense of that when they were on the road. When I watch games on the road, watch the second period, I didn't really get that same sense. And then I, go to the game and I'm like, man, it's just watching them in the second period. What's going on here? So I'm like, okay, fine. I've been looking at this and thinking that there's a problem and hearing the Preds announcers and thinking they're wrong. And I'm like, well, I can track this myself. And so, one of the things I started tracking as kind of a side note, I don't track it on this podcast. I haven't done it in a little while, was whether or not I was a bad influence on the team, because their record when I went to games was not very good this year. But that's a whole nother story. I'm not gonna. We'll get into that another day. But anyway, so I said, okay, I can start tracking the period, and so. So what I started doing was tracking the goals scored by periods. Okay, so that's what I do. I track goals scored by period, and then whether or not the Preds got the first goal. Now, there's a lot of other things that I could track. That's what I started because that's what I was interested in. And then I started seeing some really interesting data, like, what is it, the Preds, if they lose the second period, I forget. I don't have the stats all up in front of me, but if there were certain things like if they didn't win the second period, they never won, or if they lost the first period away, they never won the game. I mean, there was some things that kind of jumped out at the beginning. Now, at the beginning of the season, again, you've only got a limited data point, and then some of these times when I'm looking up things that are in game, and it's like, well, okay, I've got 4 data points here, and that's not really meaningful. But it's at least something to talk about. But anyway, so that's what I'm doing. I got the spreadsheet with the goals scored by periods by the Preds and their opponents, and who scored the first goal, and in what period the first goal was scored. And so then from that, what do I track? All of these things I track by overall home and away, and that is wins and losses of games, wins and losses, periods won, lost, and tied, and I think most people understand that, but basically if you just look at the one period and the Preds score a goal and the other team doesn't, then the Preds won that period. That's the way I look at it. I was watching a game the other day, and the Preds lost the period on the goals. The other team had scored one, but the interview with the coach said he felt like they had won the period, that they had played better. And so that's not what I'm talking about again. All I'm doing, if I get into commentary about a game, watching the game, and that's different. But when I start talking about wins and losses, that's the numbers. Either the Preds scored more goals, they scored the same number of goals, or scored less goals in that period. Okay, that's it. Whether or not the Preds do or do not get the first goal, and the record in each period in that circumstance. So if the Preds get the first goal, what's their record in each period? If the Preds don't get the first goal, what's their record in each period? If they do or don't get the first goal in that particular period and the record in that period. Sometimes the first goal doesn't get scored until the second period. And at home, I think I'm remembering this right. At home, the first goal could even be in the third period. Away, the first goal has never been scored in the third period to date. I believe that's right. I was noticing that the other day. So if, what's their record in the periods if the first goal is scored in that period? The winning and losing number and percentages in each period, and they win, lose, or tie. The number of goals scored by period. And then I can modify my spreadsheet to show me a particular set time period and get the stats for that. Because sometimes it's interesting to go back and say, okay, what did they do in December? What did they do in November? And look at it and see what that is. So I started tracking some in-game stats because we start watching the game and it's like, well, they like the other night they tied the first period against the Wild. Okay, so what happened? So what are they when they tie the first period? Well, I think what I had seen at that point, if they tie the first period in the games where they tied the first period away, they were 3-3, 2-2, no 2-2, 2-2, 3-3. I'm going to go with 3-3, 3-3. But the interesting part of that, 2-2. We're going to go with 2-2. 2-2. And the interesting part of that is only one time when they won the game did they win the second period. So what happened the other night? Well, they tied the second period. Okay, well, that's rare. So that's 1-2. So how many games did they tie the first period, tie the second period away? 1-2. So they're 1-2 in those types of situations. So that's not looking very good. So those are what I call the in-game stats. Given where they're at, what are their propensity for doing, moving forward and whatnot. So what does it look like they're on track for? I think if you've been listening, if they get the first goal and they win the first period at home, you can go home, start, your celebrations because they are pretty likely to win the game, given the data. Now, of course, playing the game is different from what, the old data says. So anyway, that's what that is. So I also have an idea of tracking the special teams plays too. I think that's a natural thing. How many times did they have power plays? Did they score? Did they get a shorthanded goal? When they were shorthanded, did the other team get a power play goal? You can even, if you're looking, you can always track if they scored a goal, when. I think it's also a little interesting at times to track whether a goal was scored like in 10 seconds or 15 seconds, half a minute after the goal, maybe even up to a minute, because if you've got players out there in a shorthanded situation, they could be on the ice for a while, and then the guy comes out of the box and still skating around, and the kid's kind of worn out, and the goal can be scored, and it's not considered a power play goal. But it's a goal that wouldn't have happened, most likely wouldn't have happened had there not been the power play, because the power play caused the other team, one of the teams was so aggressive and able to maintain the puck and wear out the other side that they were able to create the opportunity and score because of that. And I think that could be something that too. So this gets a little interesting there, and then special teams can go across periods. So I think one of the things I always heard, I think Jim Fox there, or maybe it was Bob, and it is that they like it when the power play goes across the intermission, because then they can come back and they've got clean ice. The Zamboni's out there and he cleans up the ice, and then they get to come out and they get to skate around with this nice fresh ice. So sometimes that, can make a difference too. And so I've been tempted. In fact, I was tempted, I think last year, really tempted to track when certain players were playing or scoring or being absent. Because some players, Philip Forsberg, make such a difference if they are on the ice, if they are playing. Last year especially, I don't have the data for this, but it always felt like me if I watched, and it's like I felt like the Preds were just not doing very well, and it was something wrong. Then I'd start looking and say, okay, is Forsberg in the lineup? And a lot of times he wouldn't be. So I think we've been fortunate. Knock on wood. Don't want to say this, but yeah, I think he's had a really good season. Got that hat trick the other night, and he's been healthy and he's been playing, and we've had a lot of good success this season, and he's not the only one. He's not the only one. I keep watching. I know that there's a lot of skill out there, and skill takes its form in a lot of different ways. Forsberg is one of the high skill players in the league. He does things that a lot of people just can't do, and so he makes a big difference with. Being able to do things that make a little saucer pass that goes between his legs and over somebody's stretched arm and right on the stick. Not that I've seen that, but he makes a big difference. And so that that wind up being a little bit more challenging for me, but it's a stretch goal. So anyway, so that's what I've been doing. That's what I've been looking at, and that's who I am and why I'm doing this. And I think it's fun. I just love, go to the games, and as we're going to the game, I'll be telling my wife, I'm like, okay, well, they've met this team 3 times this year, and they're 2-1, and like with the Wild. The stats I gave the other night is both wins were 6-1. The Preds won 6-1 in their win, and the Wild won 6-1 in one of theirs, and then the Preds won the other one 3-2. Not giving anything away. The Wild won the other night 4-3 in overtime. It'd be a tie in all 3 periods. I think that has to be the first time. Yeah, I think that's what looking at my in-game stuff. 7-4, first period tie, second period tie after a first period tie 1-2, third period tie after second and third period time 0-0. So I think that was the first time that happened. Anyway, I'll get to those statistics when I cover Wednesday night's game. That'll be coming to you tomorrow. And I hope you guys find this interesting. I hope I didn't go on too much about myself. I hope I made that interesting too, even if I did go on too much about myself. I think this sport is a lot of fun. It's a lot more fun in person. If you're a Preds fan and you haven't been to a game, it's worth going. There's so much fun. Playoff games are so much more fun. So, if you have an opportunity to go to a game and you can go to a playoff game, that would be great. But go to a game. If you're a Preds fan, you don't live in the Nashville area, you can go to one of the local games. Even like minor league games can be very fun. We used to go see the Seattle Thunderbirds. I think one of the players that the Preds got at the draft day, they showed him in his Seattle Thunderbird jersey in the picture in the trade tracker. So that was fun. That was a lot of fun. They've got a great stadium in Kent. They built a new one. They used to play down at the Key Arena, which is where the Kraken now play, but at the time it was where the Seattle Supersonics and the Storm played, and not the best stadium for hockey. I think intentionally developed that way when it was built. Either way, they built a new facility down in Kent, and it's just great. It's a really great facility. The seats are nice and comfortable. It's fun going and watching this. Under 21, I think, is the Thunderbirds. It's under 21 league. They play a bunch of Canadian teams. I always wanted to go up to like Kamloops and go across a lot of them are just barely into Canada, but they kind of go across this one road. You can go to Kamloops, and I forget the names of the other ones. And I thought, oh, that'd be so much fun to go up in winter into Canada and drive, go to these minor league hockey games. I just, my wife was like, "Go." I ain't going. Just could not convince her it was a good idea for both of us to go. So never did that. I think it would have been great. I bet it'd be so much fun. Always wanted to go see a game in Calgary. Love Calgary fans. They in the winter, we ran into this when we were in LA, and in the winter a bunch of them get on a bus and they drive down and they go, they probably start I don't know if we go to Seattle or not. But anyway, so they would go to a game and I think they'd go see the San Jose games. I think they see the Sharks and they'd come down and they'd see a game with the Kings, and then they'd go see a game in Anaheim, and then they'd go down and see a game in Arizona, and so we were sitting beside them at one time. They're talking about how they just take a couple of weeks and they do this hockey road trip, and they were so much fun to talk to. Having lived in Seattle for a long time, been to a number of games in Vancouver, and do not care for Vancouver fans and do not care for the Vancouver team. Talk about a bunch of fans that now, not every fan. I've got friends that are Vancouver Canuck fans. They're fine. But I just remember we were up there at the Kings game, and and they never show replays. When their team commits a penalty, they don't bother showing it. I mean, but if the opponent commits a penalty, they'll replay that. But if the Canucks get called for a penalty, they don't bother to show it in the arena. And everybody there thinks it's, didn't happen. Kind of like that Anaheim Ducks announcers. The guy was sitting next to us, and they called a penalty on Vancouver, and they go, well, the NHL likes to help out the weaker teams. And it's like, well, you jerk. So based on that data set of just a few people in the arena, I don't like Canuck fans. But the thing I learned when we were sitting next to the Calgary fans is we have that in common. And I think I've talked to Canadiens fans too. We happen to be up in Toronto, the Maple Leafs. We happened to be up in Toronto a few years ago, and we took our Kings stuff. The Kings were not playing, but wanted to go to see a game there and loved it. Oh my gosh, older stadium, but the graphics that they did on the ice was just amazing, and it was so much fun to be in Toronto. And we went out to a bar and we're wearing our Kings stuff, and they had just won. It must have been the 2012-2013 year, and everybody's like, "Oh yeah, man, you got to represent the Stanley Cup holder." Absolutely, they were great. People wanted to buy us beers, and just amazing fans. You gotta love them. So I think a lot of people unite over not liking the Vancouver Canuck team. The official NHL diving team when the Sedin twins were there. I guess I'm rambling on about more and more about hockey, but I really enjoy the sport. And like I said, if you haven't been to a game, you should go. In person, they're so different than on TV. You get just a better sense of the flow and players coming off the bench because it's a very dynamic game. Players can come off the ice, go on the ice. Doesn't happen during a timeout. You don't have to get a guy holding up a sign. Doesn't have to be an official announcement. They just do it. There they go. They're off, and the game just keeps going. It's a game that doesn't necessarily have to stop, and it's a lot more fun if there's not a stoppage for like 6-7 minutes. It's just unbelievable. One of the fun things about the game the other night that we went to, not only did it go on for 6-7 minutes at a time with no stoppage. Boy, the Kings, the Preds looked so fast. They looked so good that night. The other team was skating fast too, but I was really, really, really thrilled to see how fast the Preds were skating, and maybe that's in some of the influx of the guys they brought up from Milwaukee at the end of last year. Last year, at the end of the year, was fun because they brought those kids, quote unquote kids, up, right, and let them play together, and then it was like, wow, these guys are good. So much fun. To see that kind of excitement, that kind of energy and quickness and speed. So that's always fun too. And it's much, much better in person. So anyway, I guess I'm rambling on here. I didn't mean this podcast to be so long. It looks like I'm about to hit the 54-minute mark, but hey, you guys, to go Preds, thanks for listening. You have been listening to Predators Proclivity with Preston Proctor as your host. That's right. This is Preston Proctor listening, and you're listening to Predators Proclivity. Thanks. Have a great day. Go Preds.